Welcome to the Mojo Market Report. Here's your hosts, Dave Sturchio and Chris Gueci.
What's going on, everybody? Welcome to the Mojo Market Report here on a Wednesday. We hope you guys are doing well out there. Thank you for joining us, as always. Dave Sturchio, Chris Gueci, and of course, A5 Anthony behind the glass, working the boards back there, getting all the graphics ready to rock because we got ourselves another loaded show. Wednesdays are always fun. We obviously have a lot of football games to talk about on the Mondays and the Tuesdays and the Thursdays and the Fridays, right? There's a lot of football action to be talked about, but on Wednesdays we get to do a bit of a deeper dive. And last couple of Wednesdays we've been retro booming. We've compared some draft classes, and it's funny because the last time we compared draft classes, we're like, well, when Mojo gets college players, when,
baby.
It's here. You can now draft. Well, it's technically drafting too. If you're waiting for the NFL draft, you can now invest in college football players, specifically right now, the college football quarterbacks. And I know we brushed over it on Monday because it was the big announcement over the weekend. And I know the guys at the opening bell did a wonderful job covering some of the college guys as well. But we're deciding to go into this a little bit different because we're 6 weeks into the year. Technically, if you think about it, 7 weeks will be next week. We're past a third of a year is done already, right? 6 to 18, yes. So we're I have to do math
you
here.
did it, buddy. I'm proud of you.
Yeah, I know. I'm trying. But anyway, so we're past the third mark. We're 1/3 of the way through the NFL season. So we're also starting to see who's going to be in the upper
echelon of the quarterbacks. That's what we're going to be talking today.
Yeah, but I was actually going to say the upper
echelon of the NFL draft.
Yes,
there we go.
This is why. This is the yin and the yang, guys. But anyway, so right now as it stands, just so everybody's clear, 6 weeks into the year, we're not saying that this is going to be the order, but based off the 6 week sample size we've seen, I'm thinking to myself, this might be the order. Right now, the number one overall pick is owned by Carolina. And just based off of what we've seen with this team, Baker Mayfield getting hurt, they ship Robbie Anderson out of town. It's PJ Walker's show over there. They're talking about trading everybody else. It's a mess. It's a mess in Carolina. So right now they're sitting at 1. They might lock that down in the next couple of weeks. Number 2 would be Vegas. Number 3 would be the Detroit Lions, believe it or not, as hyped as everybody's getting.
I believe it. I've been telling everybody for the last couple of weeks that the Lions still stink.
Right. Okay,
and they will be there in the top 5.
And then there's Houston. This one makes me cringe. Right now, top 5 pick. The Philadelphia Eagles are sitting there with the Saints pick right now. So just like, oh, God, Saints just start winning. And then you have Houston again. So they got the 4 and the 6. Seattle, Pittsburgh, Arizona, Jacksonville. So when you look at the top 3 quarterbacks that we're going to be breaking down real quick, I got to assume, and again, I don't want to make bold predictions here in October, but you got to assume that if these 3 guys keep playing the way they're playing, that they're going to find themselves in the top 10 of the draft, right? Because teams are going to be looking for their quarterback, and there's specific teams that I think might be diving into these guys. But right now, what you can do is you can invest in them right now on the Mojo Market if you download the app. Make sure you download the app. It's the only way to do it. All right, so we start with Bryce Young real quick. Right now, he's entered the Mojo Market with a value of $32.99. He is the top dog as far as the Mojo quarterbacks of college football are concerned. Right now, he's sitting in between, believe it or not, Zach Wilson and Tua. So right now, he's already got a price that's comparable of 2 guys that are in their second year. So that's pretty impressive right off the rip. Right. I mean,
I think like when we're looking at last year's, if we're trying to get a career arc based off of last year's rookie class, there wasn't any quarterback in last year's class that's as good as any of the 3 pro prospects in terms of being a pro prospect that we're going to talk about today. So I think it is essentially fair based on, I think that they're all going to be potentially top 5 picks as it stands now, which is insane. You can have not really insane. That's been happening before where 3 quarterbacks could possibly go in the top 5. I think this is the type of class that could happen. And if you look at where they're slotted, they can't really earn banked value, but you could get them at an early point in their career. If you see where Justin Herbert is after year 1, you see as soon as these guys get drafted, I think their market value is going to shoot up because once they're on a team in a situation, let's just say somebody lands in the number 2 spot in Vegas. Derek Carr better hope the Raiders start winning some football games because that offense is loaded with talent. And I know Derek Carr would potentially, teams would be interested in trading for Derek Carr, and the Raiders could just make that switch now. Even though they signed Devontae on the terms that him and Derek Carr are best friends, I don't think that matters when it comes to business in the NFL.
Well, if you want my opinion, I think Bryce Young is the number 1 overall pick. I do. So whoever wins that sweepstakes is going to get themselves some Bryce Young next year. He's being compared a little bit to a Russell Wilson, and not current Russell Wilson. Russell Wilson in his prime. I guess that's so terrible to say that Russell Wilson's like still not in his prime, but you do the math. I mean, look at what he's been doing this year and into last year. And a little bit of Kyler Murray action. So there's a little bit of comps when it comes to that. He's a 2021 Heisman finalist. He'll probably be up again for it this year. So obviously the number 1 overall pick will probably get themselves some Bryce Young. To me, if Carolina keeps playing the way they're playing, if you're in a full rebuild and you start shipping off some pieces, it's a good fit in Carolina, no?
Yeah, I mean, any quarterback is a good fit in Carolina.
And they're going to be on the coaching search.
Out there right now, P.J. Walker from Temple and Baker Mayfield, when he gets back, I don't think anybody wants him to come back, including the wideouts in Carolina.
Sam Darnold lost calls over there, by the way.
Carolina's drafting a quarterback no matter what position they draft in this season. So a quarterback is going to Carolina. One of these 3 guys will be a Panther.
Yeah. And then obviously we move on to C.J. Stroud, Ohio State quarterback, stud. Mojo value right now, 31.64. His comps are being, they're saying he's got the cannon, right? He's got a great arm, and he's being compared. Like they're saying, if he used his legs more, he can be compared to Justin Herbert. Justin Herbert doesn't necessarily take off and run, but he has the ability to do so. Am I wrong by saying or a bold statement to say that most college quarterbacks right now have the ability to run? Like, is that the new breed of athlete? There's no more Dan Marino sit back in the pocket and start lacing them in.
That's not exactly
kind of a dead
true.
thing.
Like, everybody has the ability to run in terms of being a young guy, but not all of them are running quarterbacks by any stretch. Like, Justin Herbert's not necessarily known as a running quarterback. He's 24 years old, 25 years old.
No, I know, but the ability is there. If he gets out of the pocket, he can make a move.
Most young quarterbacks do have the ability to run, but it doesn't necessarily mean that it's going to translate to the NFL, nor should you want it to all the time. I think pocket passers tend to last a lot longer in the NFL, so that's the guys I would really kind of be investing in if I'm investing in these younger guys. But none of these guys are traditional pocket passers anyway. And the reason why I don't like C.J. Stroud is because of the Ohio State
There's a stigma over there in Ohio State.
There's a stigma attached to these Ohio State quarterbacks, but this guy's the one that
jury's
might
still
be,
out on Justin Fields. I mean, let's not get crazy.
If I'm the jury, it's not. I'm not a fan of Justin Fields. I think that if there's a quarterback that's going to break that mold, it could be a C.J. Stroud, but that's what they were saying about Justin Fields as well. Athleticism doesn't necessarily translate into the NFL because everybody is an athlete up in the next level.
Some people are comparing, some experts are comparing him to a Mac Jones type situation where he's not like, you're not looking at him like, there's your prototypical guy. You know what I mean? Like, it's a little bit different. If my bold prediction right now is that he is the future quarterback of the Houston Texans, because the Houston Texans, within the first 6 picks, have 2 cracks at him. They'll make the move. They'll get it. They'll get their guy.
All those good practices that Davis Mills is stringing together just aren't going to stave off one of these blue chippers. Because I do like Davis Mills, and I think it's unfortunate. But I feel like as you see the Texans losing games, you're starting to see more and more that Davis Mills is in fact a backup.
Great story.
And that one of these players will probably usurp him for that job next season. And because he's on his rookie deal and he's in the 4th round pick, I believe, so it's not really a loss for the Texans. They could afford to be paying a quarterback. But the Texans front office is in disarray. I think they just fired their president. So.
They did. I mean, you would think it would be over after they got rid of Bill O'Brien, but still firings to be had.
Well, that guy was there during the Bill O'Brien era.
Oh, so they're really cleaning house. Yeah. that's all right. Well, anyway, like I said, I think he might be a Houston Texan before you know it. So invest in him right now at 64, and he falls right now, believe it or not, in between a Trey Lance, whose stock dropped because of the fact that he got injured, and the next guy we're going to talk about. He's actually right next to him in price, and that's Caleb Williams at USC. Caleb Williams is $27.79, which, believe it or not, that's a gap. That's a $4 gap between C.J. Stroud and Williams, and I'm looking at the two, and I'm like, well, are they that far different? Like, I don't know. You've watched a lot of college ball.
I'm big on Caleb Williams. This is my favorite quarterback in the Hendon Hooker might be up there as well.
Hooker, yeah,
he just did to Alabama. But my favorite quarterback in the college football right now is Caleb Williams. Just what he did against Utah last week. I know they didn't get the W, but there were some questionable calls. I know we're not going to bring up the roughing the passer that got negated a pick that would have essentially ended the game in USC. But USC went into Utah, and Utah has one of the best defenses in the country, especially a pass defenses in the country, and they laid 42 points on them. They lost because Whittingham, the coach for Utah, decided to go for 2 at the end of the game, and they succeeded. And it was just a great game altogether. I could promise you that the reason why USC did not win that game was nothing to do with Caleb Williams. Going into the game, he had 14 touchdowns, 1 interception. He's doing it through the air, on the ground, and Lincoln Riley just knows how to make that happen.
Lincoln Riley, good college coach.
Yeah.
He seemed to have
Caleb
done
Williams
wonders.
is my guy. I'm a big on Caleb Williams, and if there's a college quarterback I'm investing in, it's going to be that guy for
All
sure.
right.
I think there's more room for growth there, and I think that because he might
Expectations might be a little lower. Yeah.
expectations might be a little bit lower, and I think he might end up on a better team than a lot of these other guys because I think these other 2 might be picked a little bit higher. You could maybe essentially see Caleb Williams land a little bit lower in the draft possibly, and when that happens, you end up on a better team.
Bold prediction?
Yes.
Detroit at 3. I think Goff is not the guy, and they get to make their move. With the young team over there, Jameson Williams coming back.
That would be a good
DeAndre
spot.
Swift.
That would be a good spot.
Amon-Ra St. Brown. That's a big offense.
I can't wait to see how all this unfolds going forward. I'm not sure. College football has been so up in the air the last couple seasons with eligibility and the transfer portals. I'm not even positive that all 3 of these guys are going to be in the draft. I mean, I know for a fact Bryce Young and CJ Stroud will.
Caleb has a chance to do it. If he wants to come back, he could.
He could.
He could, yeah.
All right. So yeah, that's. I don't think he's gonna, but
we shall see. But anyway, yes, do that right now. Mojo app right now. Go invest in some college football quarterbacks. Now, moving on. This is where it gets good today because what we've been doing, after the show and we start prepping for the next show, we've been all over Mojo.com, right? Mojo.com right now. Has a fantastic article by Dalton. You know what? I feel like he's Seal, he's Prince, he's one name. He's Dalton. If you don't know who Dalton is, go find out who Dalton is.
He's the lead blogger over on Mojo. Go check him out.
He is the top dog, right? Go over there. He's doing wonderful things over at Mojo.com. He wrote a fantastic article about 3 running backs right now that are absolutely going to tear up the future scene, okay? These 3 guys, I'll just roll them off right now. We're going to break them down a little bit. Are some of the guys that we've talked about already plenty on this show. Breece Hall being one of them. And of course, Brian Robinson coming off of his crazy story. He's one of them. And Travis Etienne of the Jacksonville Jaguars. He's got talking points about all of them. We're going to break it down, dissect them, see if we kind of agree or disagree. Okay. So we start with, obviously, Breece Hall. Breece Hall has absolutely crushed it so far. Okay. And the record is there. His career trajectory already. He started right around. He's been up in his career 13.89%. So right away, he's climbing, and this is no multipliers factored in. This is legitimate percentages moving up within the Mojo market. Right now, 76 carries, 391 yards, 3 touchdowns. He's averaging over 5 yards a carry, so that's big. 19 catches, 218 yards through the air. One very long.
It's all about the
touchdown.
all-purpose yards with this guy.
Yes,
He's doing it through the air and on the ground.
Dalton Cates put out a tweet. And I didn't pull it up here, but I'll just read it. Most scrimmage yards for a 21-year-old running back drafted round 2 or later through their first 6 games all time. Breece Hall is number 1, right? He joins some fantastic company behind, well, maybe not Kerryon Johnson, but Kerryon Johnson had a nice little start when he started. But then there's guys like Jonathan Taylor, Le'Veon Bell, and Clinton Portis. That's all there. He's above those guys. The highest future, right now, he's got the highest future projected market value for any running backs on Mojo right now. So is that justified? What Dalton is suggesting right now, go long, 3-time multiplier. He's basically saying that Breece Hall at the end of the year will be a top 10 back.
Yeah, right now he's sitting at 17, or at the time of the article being written. I'm not sure if he's shot up or shot down based on any other players.
17th, right?
So he was ranked 17th, and I agree with Dalton's assessment that he will finish the season as a top 10 back. Right now, he's the number 1 back in terms of future market projections. That's Breece Hall, and I think he's going to live up to it because you've seen through 6 games what their plans are with this guy. Mm-hmm. And Robert Saleh, he took all the receipts, and they're a smash-mouth team. Don't think about the 80 pass attempts through the first 2 weeks with Joe Flacco at the helm. These guys are definitely going to be pounding the football, and when they do decide to throw it, they're not really letting Zach Wilson air it out. So at least in the interim, they're going to have Zach Wilson underneath with a lot of these intermediate routes and the checkdowns. Breece Hall is that guy. I agree 100%. Dalton, you're the man on this one. Breece Hall will be a top 10 back in the Mojo market by season's end.
What do you think about top 10 back in the NFL?
Well, yes, I think that goes hand in hand.
That goes hand in hand, right?
Yeah.
Okay. Number 2 would be Mr. Brian Robinson. We talked a lot about this guy because of the fact that even going into the season after being drafted, the Washington Commanders had already told Antonio Gibson, hey, man, thanks for everything. You're our new kick returner. You're going to be really good at that because we got ourselves a brand new bell cow, and his name's Brian Robinson. Now, what happens in the preseason? Obviously, crazy story. Guys carjacked, gets shot twice in the leg. The future's bleak, right? And you notice that as it happened on the Mojo Market. So you're thinking, all right, well, now we don't know about this guy. Next thing you know, within 8 weeks of real time, the guy's suiting up and now has been named the starter of the Washington Commanders. Now, I know the Commanders right now haven't shown you much, okay? Carson Wentz is abysmal. He's now hurt. But here's where I think the Commanders might get a shot of life, and that's because of another quarterback, a change at quarterback because of a broken finger. Wentz out, inside, insert Tyler Heineke, insert possibly Sam Howell. Who knows? We're not talking about those guys, though. We're talking about Brian Robinson. Ready? This is stuff that I got from this article from Dalton, by the way. So this is not my information. This is his, and it's great. One of 11 third round running backs to see 15 carries in his first 2 starts. That's huge. Volume, crazy. All of a sudden, like you don't get that volume in the NFL when you're just starting off, right? Since 2000, ready for this stat? 63 running backs have been taken in the 3rd round. He's standing out as one of the top dogs. He's getting the workload of just comparable to a guy like David Montgomery and Kareem Hunt. Just to give you an example as to how much...
And Kareem Hunt led the NFL in rushing yards in his rookie season, so he won a rushing title, and we all know David Montgomery, if it wasn't for the Bears' offensive line, he'd be a lot more productive, but he had a really productive rookie year for a guy drafted
so
there.
the sky is the limit for Brian Robinson. I mean, forget the story. Don't forget the story. Like, definitely embrace the story because that's a part of this master plan. But do you agree with his assessment to know that Brian Robinson might be one of those top dogs that you want to invest in right now?
Yeah, Brian Robinson, he's got all the tools to be a very similar back to a Breece Hall. He was taking the league by storm in preseason when he was all the hype was about Brian Robinson, and it was Antonio Gibson taking a back seat. Then the unfortunate incident happened and things took a turn, but now here we are, right? Brian Robinson's back, ready to go. I think that he has the potential to be a Breece Hall type. I look at his usage at Alabama. Look, he got recruited by Alabama. He stayed there all 4 years, which is rare for a talent like him because, sitting behind some of the guys he sat behind, he could have probably started somewhere else, but that actually plays well for a future NFL career to me because you sit there behind some of these guys. You don't get all that mileage and the wear and tear on the tires like a lot of these backs that get 1,000 touches in college. You don't need all that. Brian Robinson's fresh. You saw what he did in the college football playoff last year. He rose to the occasion in big games. I don't know what there is to not like about Brian Robinson. And at his share price now,
super cheap.
It's super low for a guy that is a starting running back in the league.
And how many, you would think, it's funny because I know there's a lot of that's a crowded backfield over there. Antonio Gibson's not like he's gone. He's there. And, of course, they got J.D. McKissick to eat into some of the pass-catching downs, right? But, you're looking at this guy, and you feel like when you look around the NFL, there's only a couple, if not any left. I mean, maybe Saquon Barkley, maybe Derrick Henry are the guys that are true 3-down backs, don't need a spell, and if they do need a break, there is a guy on the roster, but he's not that big of a deal.
I don't think that the Commanders are going to be looking for Brian Robinson to be that just yet. I don't think it's because he's not capable. I just think that they also have 2 other capable backs that at catching the ball out of the backfield with Antonio Gibson and J.D. McKissick. But that almost, in my opinion, that spells long-term value for a Brian Robinson because right now, are the Commanders really going to go anywhere this season? It doesn't look like they will be. I think if you're investing in Brian Robinson, you're investing in the Brian Robinson career, not necessarily so much the 2022 season because the Commanders have an uphill battle, but it's good to see him get his feet wet in the league and have some success because that's what we all expected, and I'm glad we're seeing it.
I'm not saying NFL teams kind of shut the door on a season after 6 weeks, and I'm sure they'll still compete. And again, changing a quarterback, who knows what that's going to do. But I will say this, and there's something to be said about this. When the team is kind of known to not, you got the NFC East is incredible right now. You know what I mean? When you think about it and you're if you're Ron Rivera, Ron Rivera's not walking into the locker room look, guys, division's out of reach. We're toast. I understand that. But if this gets away from the Washington Commanders team, there's less pressure on this team, which means better reps, does that make sense to you? I'm not saying that
I get it.
games don't matter, but I'm
what
saying
happens,
less pressure to
there's vets
win games, I guess.
There's less pressure to win games, but when you have a team that's playing for nothing anymore, they're figuring things out on the fly, and they're using games as basically practice. I know that it sounds crazy because it is. But I shouldn't say as practice, but when it's 4th and 3, you might go for it. So the offense sees more opportunity because there's really no sense in punting. Okay, we're going to go for it because if we don't get it, no big deal. You go for 2. All those types of things happen when the team their season's essentially over. Unless
you're Brian Daboll, just do it opening week. Set the tone, But anyway, got that thing playing good. All right, the final running back that Dalton brings up on this tremendous article is Travis Etienne. This one has us with the little bit of an eyebrow raise,
head scratcher.
Head scratcher.
Not because
look, he's averaging 3 yards a carry, over 3 yards a carry after contact. Okay, so the guy can still, he can take a hit and continue to move. Right now, the reason why I don't agree with this is because of the fact there's a legitimate 50-50 split going on right now with James Robinson.
Maybe even less.
He's outperforming him on specific downs, but James Robinson is showing hey, I'm still here. You don't get to just come on in and take my spot. He's got 54 attempts, 301 yards. He only 301 yards on the ground, which averages actually 5.6 a carry. So his numbers are nice. The big thing is for me with the 50-50 split that I was talking about, the Jaguars must run the ball a lot more than some people think because you got Trevor Lawrence, and why not? And you invested all this money in Christian Kirk, right? But outside of week 1, so weeks 2 through 6, he's got 9 touches or more. So if they're running the ball 20 times and it's a 50-50 split, he's right there. So the opportunities are there for Etienne. I just don't see it as a long-term thing if James Robinson is in the fold. That's just my opinion.
I mean, I think that they basically drafted Travis Etienne to be the guy. It didn't work out because of the injury. There's something about him that I just can't see him being an every down back. They compare him to an Alvin Kamara type, and Alvin Kamara was never really the type of back that was able to, get 20 carries a game and go in between the tackles. I know that he has been able to disprove that notion from time to time, but at the end of the day, Kamara is not that guy, right? He's more the guy out of the backfield, going to catch passes, make things happen in space. Travis Etienne, he fits that mold to a degree. I just worry about the usage in terms of a Doug Peterson type style offense where Alvin Kamara had Sean Payton and Travis Etienne has Doug Peterson, which I think that they are a little more vanilla in their approach in terms of that's Doug Peterson is. I'm not necessarily agreeing with Dalton on the Travis Etienne going forward.
Listen, we ain't gonna agree on everything, right?
Yeah, I don't think I like the player, but if you even see, you see the graph right there. It is a good time to get in on him because the market thought he was going to be much, much better.
Well, he dropped off the face of the earth based off his injury, too.
Well, this is this year. So that's going into this season. So right around week 1, Travis Etienne had this high expectations. He was one of the guys that people were pegging in fantasy drafts as maybe a league winner because he wasn't going in the first or the second round. And if he did succeed the way he was drafted to in the first round last year, that he could be the guy that elevates a fantasy team. It didn't happen out of the gate, but as we're looking a little bit deeper, there is good data to support the fact that he can do it. I just don't know that he is the guy that's going to give him the opportunity to do it because of a James Robinson presence and because I just don't know that he has the body type to be able to withstand that. But that said, he does fit the mold of maybe
Tony Pollard,
a souped up Michael Carter or a Tony Pollard because I think he has more talent than those guys. No offense, Dave, but I think Travis Etienne is a more talented player than them. I'm a little bit worried because it's the Jacksonville Jaguars, and have we ever really been able to get behind anything Jacksonville Jaguars?
I was very sold real early, and then I was like, "Wow, look at this team! They can score a point." And then it's just kind of wheels fell off a little bit, and you're like, "It's only a flat tire." Patch that bad boy.
You essentially get shut out at home against the Texans. That's not a good.
Yeah, it's not a good start. But when the Jaguars draft another running back next year, we'll have the same conversation. Who's the guy in Jacksonville? I feel we have friends in our circle who are Jacksonville Jaguar fans, and they're just like, another running back.
I will say that if I was to add one of these younger backs into this mix, and I know that it probably doesn't fit the criteria of the article because he's not making history, and I know that Dalton did a good job of researching these guys and find out things that they categorically fit in terms of the past players in the NFL. I think Dameon Pierce is a better buy right now than a Travis Etienne. That's just me. I think the Texans, they're looking at the running back position as something that they've already learned the hard way, not to spend a ton of money with the David Johnson debacle at the running back spot. They have a guy right now that's drafted low. They're not going to have to pay him for a really long time, if ever. And I think that he's proven right now that he can carry the football in the NFL. He had a great preseason. They kind of gave him the doghouse treatment in week 1, but then they've slowly let him kind of take the reins. And I think Dameon Pierce is a very, very good buy right now in terms of the younger running backs, rookie running backs, we'll call them.
I like it. All right. Well, you know what's something else that Dalton decided to say a lot? The word popped up a lot within his first, 3 guys that he was talking about. He talked about the word historic. He brought the historic start. He's off to a historic start. So we decided, you know what? And again, great article. But I was like, Chris, we talked about guys like Adrian Peterson last week. We talked about guys like Frank Gore, who have played forever, right? We're like, who is the top guy since the year 2000?
Who is the quintessential
king
NFL running back, according to the Mojo Market, since the year 2000?
And we found him. So today on Retro Boomin', all right, we're talking about one player. And we're talking about a guy like Ladainian Tomlinson. Now, before we bring up his stats, it's it's going to blow you away. But Ladainian Tomlinson was an every down back. He was, but his size, much like we were talking about Etienne, it wasn't always the biggest guy, but like his ability to catch the ball out of the backfield, his ability to run and gash through the tackles. Ladainian Tomlinson was another breed. So we thought to ourselves, Adrian Peterson did this and Frank Gore did this, so he can't possibly be more, right? Ladies and gentlemen, I present to you the share price for Ladainian Tomlinson at the time that he retired and was done with football. Bring it up, Ant. There it is. $32.04 a share.
Look at those numbers.
Those numbers are what we call in the world gaudy. Okay. Yeah. 13,684 rushing. So he's right there in the top rushers of all time. The biggest thing, I think, to me, is almost 4,800 yards receiving. Like, that's insane. His touchdowns, 162 times to pay dirt. So now you're seeing this price at $32.04. Chris, I got to ask you, is there anybody in the NFL right now? I mean, yeah, you can kind of dive into college because once Mojo hits the college market with running backs, you can maybe make some predictions like that guy could be the guy. Like, when you look at a Ladainian Tomlinson right now, is there anybody in the NFL that holds a candle or even scratch the surface at this guy? Because look, the top dog is what? Derrick Henry right now?
Derrick Henry.
At 26?
Not even.
25-ish?
It went down.
Went down again. Zeke went down again too. But
I don't know if they went down, but they're not that high, Dave. We're just going to say I don't know if they've gone down because I don't know where they were, but off the top of my head. But Ladainian Tomlinson, there's nobody that's going to touch him right now. Bro, when you talk about 162 career total touchdowns. In 2006, he had 1,800 rushing yards, 28 rushing touchdowns.
Set the record. That was the record year?
He had... You hear that again? 1,800 rushing yards, 28 rushing touchdowns, 56 catches, 500 yards, and 3 more touchdowns. Nobody's going to touch that because of the way the NFL is set up right now. Ladainian Tomlinson broke the mold coming out of college. I just talked about how Brian Robinson didn't get too much usage, and I really like that going into an NFL career. Well, guess what? Ladainian Tomlinson did. He played all 4 years at TCU. He had like 1 billion rushing yards. They used him.
1 billion?
They used him. Very similar usage to a James Robinson in college. I will say that, but just not the same player. Ladainian Tomlinson, not the biggest guy, but 11 years deep in the NFL and putting up those numbers over an 11-year stretch, that's not compiler status at all. I think Ladainian Tomlinson was the best all-purpose back in NFL history.
Now, can we also talk about the, don't say LT. I mean, LT
Stop
is
it,
LT.
Bro, stop it.
You're right. We're going to be talking about Micah Parsons down the line.
LT.
Micah. Everybody's going to know who Micah is. Anyway, the big one of the bigger factors that we haven't touched on much, playoff success.
Yes.
So if these guys are going deep into the playoffs, like the Chargers did a couple times, like those teams were built pretty good. When they were in the playoffs, and even with the Jets run, right? He was on those Jets runs. You accumulate those stats in the playoffs too. It's not a regular season market. It is a 24/7, 365 market for Mojo. And if you're in the playoffs and you, dare I say, win a Super Bowl, you'll be bonused out as well. So it's like,
yes,
when you're investing in players, you also want to think about their team, their future with that team, because if they can get those extra games at the end of the season to put more bank value on their own value, that's astronomical.
I feel like that's the number one way that you could exceed your market projections is to have playoff success. And I'm not positive on this, but I know that when their market projects things, I don't know how you could officially project a playoff game. So they're essentially projecting that they're going to have 17 game seasons. When you make the playoffs and you go deep, that's just a bonus. You can't project 3 playoff games.
You can't, no.
Right? So that's how you do it. And when we're talking about bank value, accumulating bank value can be done in the playoffs as well. And the best way you're essentially betting against the market projection. That's giving you an advantage, a distinct advantage, and it's just extra football games. And they're highly important football games, which I'm sure factor in more. And the chance to play in a Super Bowl and win is that bonus that you get from Mojo. So, yeah, playoff games matter. And Tomlinson, I think he played in like 11, so it's not exceptionally high. But for 11 seasons, you're averaging one per season.
One, right.
I'll take that.
An extra game. And maybe just, if you think about it, the guys that are like hovering in the upper ranks of Mojo as far as the running backs are concerned, obviously we talked about Zeke. Think about that. Zeke, I think, missed the playoffs twice in his career. And then you look at Henry. The Titans have always been relatively good, other than the fact that they're like, oh, we only have Henry. Then they make the move for Tannehill. They're the 1 seed. He gets hurt, blah, blah, blah. The rest is history. But what I say is, like, guys like Nick Chubb, that stinks unless they really turn it around in Cleveland, because he might just kind of never have the opportunity to get to the playoffs. Guys like Austin Eckler, like he's been around, he's seasoned. The Chargers always fall that a little short. You know what I'm saying? So it's like when you look at these guys and you look at their playoff expectations of getting that bonus time on the field, a lot of these guys might not ever see it. And that's unfortunate for them and their growth.
Yeah, I mean, it is what it is. Get drafted by a better team.
There
guys.
you go.
That's the only way to
hold
do
out.
it.
Do the Eli and just wait another 4 picks, and then you win 2 Super Bowls.
So do I have to pick a player that I think might have the best
if you
chance?
I mean, why not?
I know that this is going to be a little bit of pouring on and like saying like, oh, but it's Breece Hall. I mean, like, because everybody else has already been established, and like you see a little bit of a wear and tear. Like, everybody's already kind of writing Zeke off. He's not going to play 7 more years at productive football in terms of trying to catch a Ladainian Tomlinson. So I think you can look at the guys that are at the top, the Derrick Henrys. None of those guys have a chance. It has to be a guy that's younger, because then we could potentially see a shift in the way the NFL has played over their career. Because honestly, everything that's shifted has shifted towards passing, and nothing has been shifting towards the running backs. But a Breece Hall, he's the one guy when you're looking at all-purpose yards, he's getting it done on the ground. He's got his touchdowns. He's getting it done through the air. I think that's very similar to a Ladainian Tomlinson. Is he going to be able to do it for 11 seasons? I don't know. That's another question entirely. Is he going to be able to put up 28 touchdowns in a year? 31 total? I don't think so.
Well, you never know.
I'm here for it because I am invested in Breece Hall. So if Breece Hall turns into LT, I got a 5-time multiplier on Breece. If that turns into LT, then I'm going to be sitting pretty. I don't know about a yacht, but maybe a canoe.
Canoes are very cheap, so
they're not.
They're not.
Trust me, they're not.
Really? Have you ever been canoeing? That's another conversation for another day. You're afraid of the water. So I just exposed. Anyway, guys, thank you for joining us here today on a Wednesday. Tomorrow, obviously, Week 7 starts the NFL. We got ourselves a decent game. It's the Cardinals and the Saints. So we're going to see a little bit of Kamara. We talked about him. We're going to see a little bit more Eno Benjamin, Kyler Murray.
We're going to get to see a little D-Hop.
We're going to see some. Oh, that's right. Sometimes you wonder. I often wonder. You're like, did they do this on purpose?
Yes.
No, Hopkins got suspended after the schedule came out.
They might have known.
Oh my God.
We're going to get or may not have known.
DeAndre Hopkins debut on primetime on Amazon. Anyway, thank you guys for joining us. For Dave Sturchio, Chris Gueci, and of course A5 Behind the Glass at Shop Studios. We'll be back to preview Thursday Night Football tomorrow. Week 7 is here.
That's Aaron Judge hitting a home run.